Hello and welcome to episode 2 of painting this large painting of a fox in oil paints. Now this is going to be quite a long episode because I'm going to be doing a lot of smaller details, so if you want to see the shorter version, which will be a time lapse, you might want to head on over to that. Otherwise, this is going to be a brushstroke for brushstroke video. So again, I'm just using the raw umber and white. This is the second layer of oil paint in what is deemed the underpainting. So over this area here, I'm just laying in a few fern type plants and a few little marks here and there in the distant or the middle distance. And I'm going to be doing a few grasses, well, quite a lot of grasses and little plants here and there, just to create a little bit of interest. This is going to be in an old master's style, remember, so it's not going to be highly detailed as such. It will be more of a painterly approach with the brushstroke. So letting the paint and the brush do the work. And also, as you can see here, I'm going to be highlighting different areas to make certain areas stand out. So that edge of the fox now really jumps out at you because I've lightened that area. And again, as with a lot of paints, not just oil paints, acrylics do this as well, as they dry they will tend to sink in and go slightly duller. So it is best to go over with 2 or 3 different layers, do different coats once they dry. Again, I'm just bringing out the belly area of the fox by lightening that area slightly in the shape of the legs, just by doing a few little lighter brush strokes. You see I'm still using the same tone, the same colour really. Just every now and again I might need a lighter one or darker one, so I'll mix it on the palette there. Just needs to be a little bit lighter for some of those other marks to show up a little bit better. And it is also at this stage where you can alter things if you need to. If you don't think things are quite right, you can still paint over them using the same 2 colours, and no one will know any different, only you at this stage. So again, these areas, although I'm highlighting the background behind the fox, I don't really want it to stand out too much in the lower parts. I want it to emerge from the darkness, so I will probably be glazing over the top of that with darker colours in colour in the last stage. Using a few more broader style brush strokes now, just to create some rude leaf effects, just little plants here and there. So it's not particularly bright. It's a mid grey, mid warm grey, using these 2 colours. Using the finger obviously as well to blend things here and there. Now I need to create some interest in this area here. It's just one big block of darkness, this dark area, so I need to create some form of shape and interest. So I know I want to have a little bank of grasses here, so just roughly and loosely, just to give me an idea. If I don't like it, I can wipe it off. That's the beauty of oils at this stage. You wipe it off and do it again. So there's some obviously rocks in the background there, in the middle ground rather, with these little areas of grasses and tufts here and there. I might put some ferns here into this area as well. Just one or two, just to create a harmony effect. We'll see. I need to make this a little bit more dramatic, so I'm just creating a different shape there to this darker area. I want this to be like a stone area that's jutting out in the middle distance. So I'm going to use the same brush and just use a few little longer strokes to create the effect of grasses. I'm not interested in doing a detailed section of grasses where you can see every little detail of the grass itself. It's just an impression of the grasses. That's all that's necessary in this style of painting. The detail is going to be in the fox itself and in the face. That's where you want the viewer's eye to be concentrating and to rest, is in the fox's face. The rest of it is peripheral vision, and so won't be as detailed, which is why I'm not going in with a very fine brush. I'm doing these things as quite broad brush strokes. You notice I'm holding the brush in the middle or towards the back end. I'm not holding it right by the ferrule, which you would if you were doing detail. If you can hold the brush towards the back end or from the middle to the back, you're using your arm to paint and not your wrist, so you can't really do detail, which is great. It gives you a bit more of freedom of movement, and you're not restricted, and it doesn't make you do those fine detailed paint strokes. So if you want to learn to paint looser, just get a bigger brush and hold the brush towards the back. That's the big secret. You can't do detail like that. As you'll see with this stone here I'm doing, it's just scuffling the brush around to create a form of a texture in there and shapes and lighting. I'm making this up. I'm not going off any photographs of stones or anything. It's from years of painting rocks to stones that I can actually do this and make it up. You do need to go out and draw and paint reality, really, so you learn. It stays in your mind much better than drawing from a photograph, so that you can then make these things up when you need to. So you can create your own composition. So there you saw me just highlighting a few of those rocks to make them stand out a little bit more with a bit more of the white. So using the same sort of tone, I'm just adding a few little shapes here to create this sense of those layers of grasses. You'll notice there's a slight sheen on the painting. That's because before I started, remember the painting was completely dry. I gave it a light coat of a liquid or a liquid style medium, and just rub it all over it, and that just helps to create a bond between the paint and the painting itself, so that the paint will stick better to the canvas. And you can also move it around a little bit easier as well, like you saw me doing with my finger there as well. You can rub it around. So I'm just putting some more highlights in now with the white onto the fox itself. That's going to be the brightest element in this painting, the fox. So it'll have the most contrasts and the most detail. So I just want to show where the light is coming from here. So there's a little shadow line there. Right, I need to get this ear right as well. Just holding the brush slightly closer to the front at the moment for those areas where I want the accuracy. Now I've since noticed that because of the composition and perspective of this fox, looking at it there, the left ear does seem slightly larger, and this is something I hadn't noticed until I was looking at the painting afterwards. So what I will do is I will shorten that ear a little bit. It's very easy to do at this stage because you're only using the raw umber and white, so it's easy enough to mix the right tone. Just to, like those background trees, I will just paint over that ear just a little bit, just to create a shorter shape. Unfortunately, that isn't in this video, and it's hardly worth me doing another video just to show you that ear. Although I may do that. Will be a much shorter video, of course, only a couple of minutes. Right, so I'm trying to get a lighting and a glow on this coat, the fox's coat. What I'm basically doing is going over the entire painting again, because you can still see some of the red of the canvas coming through. I gave it a coat of burnt sienna, and some of that is still coming through, which is okay. It can here and there, but there's too much of it at the moment. So the whole painting needs to be gone over. I also need to decide what lighting I'm going to have on the tail here. What parts of it are going to be in light and what parts in shadow. Now, I can do the whole thing in light, and then I can create the shadows later when I glaze the colour over the top, which is sometimes easier to do. It's a great way of painting, doing the monochromatic underpainting first, followed by the thin washes of colour over the top. Of course, when I do put the colour on, it isn't always thin layers. Sometimes you will do quite a thick impasto here and there where it's required. I'm just showing a little bit of the whiteness of that tail tip as well there, which is going to be hidden behind another rock. And the fox itself will be coming out of behind the rocks and the grasses, so there'll be more grasses around. So I'm now going over the sky and creating a little bit more light areas where I want the contrast to be, and just using the paintbrush in like a circular motion almost. This creates the effect of wispy clouds. You can also alter the horizon line as well. While I'm doing the sky, I can change the shape of those distant mountains very easily, again, at this stage. You'll notice in the first episode, up at the top there, were leaves from a branch overhanging, which I've subsequently painted over because I didn't like them. So now, going over with this second stage, will completely eliminate, because you can still see them at the moment, obviously, but as I paint over it, you will notice that they will become eliminated. Creating a bit more interest now in the background by adding a bit of it could either be a lake or bright fields or a river. Again, you can just make it up. This is going to be a highlighted meadow area of grasses that are coming down the bank. Again, it highlights the fox. So I don't want too much light on this side where the white of the fox is, because it wouldn't the contrast would suffer then. So right, it needs to be a bit brighter through here, create some interest through those trees. So I'll have another clump of bushes. Again, you can just make these sort of areas up so that it becomes an imaginary landscape. Well, it is an imaginary landscape. This is the area I need to alter when I change the shape of the ear later on. I've just got some white or lighter on the brush. I'm just going to give these leaves a little bit more of a form. Quite broad brush strokes. There's going to be a rock there, or a stone. And these leaves and grasses emerging from between the rocks and stones. So again, this just creates a little bit more interest in between the rocks, rather than just having them as rocks. Because nature will find a way of invading. The grasses and leaves will tend to populate every area. So you see how it starts to look a little bit more natural and realistic just by putting a few more of those grasses in between those rocks. I'm still using the same size brush. It's a little flat bristle brush. Nothing fantastic or spectacular, very simple. And just adding one or two little shapes there as well in between the grasses, because these could be little leaves of weeds and other little plants. And they don't have to be botanically correct, you know. Ooh, what kind of plant is that? It doesn't matter at this stage. It's just a representation of nature. And just these little dots and dashes tend to make it look natural, just like nature would be, and quite random. I am going to have some grasses over these legs of the fox as well, because the grass just wouldn't just stop. There will be grasses in front where it's standing in the grasses. So I'll put those in a minute. Just put a few more little highlights in with the lighter tone. You see what I mean about putting the grasses in? By putting these leaves in, if I didn't put the leaves in, it would just all be grasses and it would look quite boring, really. So a few little leaves also round the legs and the feet of the fox. Put some one or two over here as well. It just breaks up the outline of the legs. And also put some grasses in as well. I need something down there. Let's put some grasses in. Using the edge of the brush lightly, and I'm just flicking up. Yeah, let's get some more of the white, make it a little bit lighter. I do tend to flick about a bit. While I've got a certain tone on the brush, I will go to areas like this where I think that tone is needed. sometimes you can get too bogged down with an area like those grasses. So I decided, let's have a change. Let's go to the sky. And then when you look back at the grasses, you'll have a fresh eye. So I am eliminating what was left of those leaves in the background in the sky, just by adding a little mid-tone and lighter now. Because if you want to eliminate something, it's easier to go over with a mid-tone and then go over with a light tone once that is dry. Otherwise, if you went over with a light tone, there's a certain transparency in white which will still allow the background to show through, as was the case here. But now I've gone over it again, it has completely eliminated those background leaves. I still may put them in the final picture. But perhaps not so many, just one or two little overhanging leaves from the trees on the left. It depends what I think about the composition. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. At the moment, let's just get this sky right. So you can see there's a little bit of a tonal shift there. It's lighter on the right hand side of the sky and darker towards the left, because the light is coming from the right, as you can see from the fox. So I want that sky to be lighter on the right and have any clouds there to be shown to be lit from the right. So this softness I'm getting here, the highlighted softness, is showing those clouds lit from the right. Using the same brush, just slightly blending. I'm gone with a smaller brush now, back to these grasses. I'm only using two sizes of brush there, one slightly larger than the other. This is the smaller of the two. It probably looks to be about a size 4, I think. Flat bristle brush. Yeah, this was a bit confusing here, so I need to establish this meadow, this field coming down. And then I also need to establish what's happening behind those rocks. There. So we can have a range of different levels of foliage and fields. And as we come forward, so the grasses get larger. So I'm going to have a little bush here, a few little bushes. I need to establish those, the edge of those trees there, that tree line. You see, I'm not doing the detail. I'm still holding my hand off the painting because it is still wet, remember. If I was doing detail, I would use the mole stick to help me to control the brush without touching the painting. So into the distance now, we need to have some form of a layering of the different types of landscape at the background. There's rows of trees, there's going to be fields, there's going to be rivers or lakes. I need to change the shape of some of these trees to create interest. So a few fir style, conifer style trees there. Otherwise everything can become too rounded, like lollipop trees. And I know that these fields have edges and also either stone walls or hedges. Right, just going to create some shape to this rocky outcrop here. Still not 100% sure about it. I'll know more when I start putting these lights on. And get some more highlights on there. It looks like somewhere like you would like to climb and sit on and view the landscape. It can become very fantasy, this landscape, because it is coming from the imagination, so there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of the old masters used to make up the landscapes or alter them to suit the painting, to suit the composition of the painting. And that's what we're doing here. And it's slow. It's not laborious. It should be enjoyable. All these little areas and dashes and dots of the brush should all be enjoyable. Doing this for fun, remember. It's got to be enjoyable or else there's no point in doing it. Still working on these layers of landscape in the background. Of course, the further back you go into the landscape, the less contrast you want. It becomes almost quite flattened off as it recedes into the distance. So this foreground areas, I'm doing here, needs a little bit more contrast. So I'll pick up a few highlight areas now and create these lighter shaped or lighter toned fields. I need this meadow to come down a little bit more. So the actual landscape itself changes all the time as you are painting. You'll do a little bit here, a little bit there, and you think, oh, that works, or no, that doesn't, so you'll paint over it. Back to the fox with a slightly smaller round bristle brush, just to create those little details of highlights, like the nose, the eyes, where the light is hitting the fox. A lot of the detail will be put in the colour stage, but this is to create a basic tonal underpainting with the right contrasts. So I know where the shapes are and where the light is. You see now, by putting that light into that ear, it makes it jump out at you. This is the troublesome ear. I still haven't noticed that it's slightly too large, so I will amend that at the next stage. It's not actually too far off, it's only microscopically slightly larger. Remember, you're seeing this painting at an angle here, which will, because of perspective, make that ear look a little bit larger, but it isn't as big as it looks there. Anyway, that's my problem. I'll sort that out. So again, giving me the shape of the fox, these highlights are the shape and anatomy of the fox. That's what's important at this stage. One or two little dashes of the light. to create the effect of detail without actually doing it. I'm not painting every hair. But you can certainly see where the light's coming from. It's hitting the right hand side of the fox. So I need to have little areas like this where there's a little muscle under there which bulges out, which will catch the light more. And it's this type of thing you need to know your anatomy. Although there's all sorts of styles for all sorts of people. You could do a completely imaginary fox and just make it up out of your own head. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's your painting. Well, yeah, I do like using this white at this stage, and I like to use it quite thick too during these in these areas. In the lighter areas the paint should be very thick, and in the darker areas the paint should be thin. That's always been the old master's way of working. Light should be thick, dark should be thin. So I'm really laying this paint on now. It's quite, because I'm back to the flat bristle brush, I can really allow it to be plastered on almost. And this will work to great effect when it's dry and you put the paint on, the colour glazes. It'll really show up those the thickness of the paint in those areas. Now this is the shoulder and leg area. I just want the light just to hit a little bit, because a lot of it's going to be in shadow. So just here and there I want the light to be picked out. So on the back there, at the top of the back leg, the light is really going to be picked out in that area, and on the shoulder needs to be brighter there. And rougher. It doesn't have to be too smooth. I mean, these are wild animals. And the light's going to be really hitting the top edge of that rock and the top edge of that rock. And just bounce it around the edge and blend it as it falls downwards. And the same with this rock. This is going to be a little highlighted rock as well, this little outcrop. So you see, just by doing one or two little lighter areas, that suddenly comes alive. We can do one or two light areas up here too, where the light's coming through or showing through the trees. Now that needs to be carried on to show the continuity of the landscape. Right, now we're going in with the dark. Now I'm going in with a smaller round brush now, and using the raw umber pure, no white, just to re-establish those darker areas and to correct any mistakes that I think I've created by using the white. So that's much better now. You can see the shape of the nose and the eyes much better. And the edges of this ear are a little bit, there's a little dark tint to the tips of the ears on a fox, so we'll just blend that in there. The same with this one. Now again, by adding this dark raw umber to those darker areas, which were dark already, this will make them even darker to create the contrasts, or make them even greater. So this fox should really stand out once I've done this. In that darker left hand side. A few little details. I'm not using a very fine brush here, I'm just creating an impression of detail, not actual detail. I do have several photos of foxes that I get reference from to see, well, what does the shape of the nose look like, or the chin. So if I'm making mistakes, I can easily double check and say, yeah, no, the nose should be smaller, the nose should be bigger, you know, whatever. The shape of the eyes. You know, you're not slavishly copying a photo. So you're just getting a reference for certain areas of a painting. Now I'm putting in these highlights on the eyes, which I know on the left hand side are going to be darker once I've put the colour on. So it will change as you put the colour on, as you will see in the colour episode. Little highlights in the eyes. We're just being very picky now, going over the entire painting, looking for areas that just need one or two little tweaks. At the moment, concentrating on the fox. There will be areas, like I've noticed, I need more grasses in the front, on the front legs of the fox. So we put some darker ones in first. We don't want them to be too uniform. Grasses and nature are random. So let's be random in the way we paint. So there will be one or two little grasses that underneath the animal that reach up to the animal and over the rocks as well. So these are the darker grasses. And just slowly build them all up, one after another. And I'm still messing around with this middle distance. Changing it, chopping it and changing it to suit those little middle distance bushes. They sort of got lost, so I'm just re-establishing them. Also to throw out the contour of the fox again, to make it stand out. Getting some darker areas in again to create that contrast in the background. Won't be as great as the contrast in the fox itself. Remember, because there's more contrast in foreground elements than there is in background elements. Less contrast the further you go back into the painting. So thank you for watching this second episode, and I hope to see you soon on the next one. In the meantime, happy painting.